You have for takeaway, You have for takeaway.
Good morning, and welcome to TAO's Executive Business Session of our Resiliency Series, Innovation During a Crisis, with Renee Pearson. I'm Skip Newberry, President and CEO of TAO, and we're really excited to be hosting an out-of-state guest with us this morning. And she's joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. A couple of rules of engagement before we start. All participants have been muted. Please remain on mute unless a TAO staff member unmutes you and calls on you to talk. You may ask or respond to questions in the chat box publicly or privately by directing your message to TAO admin or to Kara Snow. We'll ask you all to engage via the participant icon on your screen, where you have the option to vote yes or no, raise your hand, or offer applause for our speaker. We'll monitor the chat box and respond throughout the discussion. And please engage with us on social media during this call and throughout the day. We appreciate all the social support. Fun selfies with me or Renee in the background are always going to get a reshare. Due to the large number of participants and the limited time, we'll capture all questions in the chat and shift any unanswered questions to Mobilize, which is the TAO member engagement platform. Mobilize is TAO's member-only virtual community, and we'll post unanswered questions from there, which means you'll see the answers there too. Mobilize allows us to keep the conversation going after the event. And if you have any questions about joining Mobilize, you can feel free to reach out to either Justin Martinez, whose email is on the screen, or another member of the TAO team. If you have any questions about joining TAO to access this new member benefit, please reach out to membership@techoregon.org. TAO staff support is provided by Kara Snow and Justin. Please reach out to them with feedback, questions, comments, or interest in sponsoring. A huge thank you to Packstar and their CEO, Peggy Miller. Without her support, we wouldn't be able to do this series, so we really appreciate it. Please join us this Friday as we continue our Resiliency series with Jonathan Garcia, Chief Engagement Officer for Portland Public Schools. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Renee Pearson, Head of Business Integration, Digital Core, Georgia Pacific. Prior to joining Georgia Pacific, Renee enjoyed a 20-year career at Kimberly Clark, ultimately becoming the first Global Director of IT Innovation. Welcome, Renee.
Thanks, Skip. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. I just have to say, I feel not very official with that emblem in the background, and here I have a window in my home environment, so.
Nice. Well, I'll definitely have some ambient noise in the background. We've got something going on in the way of an appliance install in the other room, so it's one of the joys of living in this virtual world.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Awesome. So Renee is really involved in the tech community in Atlanta. She serves as the president of the Atlanta Technology Professionals, and she also leads her daughter's Girl Scout troop and is rumored to be one heck of a tennis player as well. So welcome. So we'll jump right into some questions. Georgia Pacific is a global manufacturing firm, over 100 years old, and your previous employer, Kimberly Clark, was founded in 1972. So that's some serious resilience for those two companies. In your mind, what makes a company resilient?
I think there's really two different ways to think about this, two different categories. One is agility and speed. And when you're talking about a large enterprise like Kimberly Clark, like Georgia Pacific, sometimes it's really hard to think of them as being quick to respond and really agile. And so I think that's a challenge, but it's really important. As you all know, being consumers, your consumer needs and demand changes all the time. So our ability to respond to that and respond to your needs, your preferences quickly is one. So agility and speed. And I think the other is being around that long, you've seen success. So you can't just sit back and say, I'm a big, large, successful company and I will always be here. We've heard the stories, right? So you have to keep challenging yourself, the value that you're delivering to your customers and consumers, and challenging the company to continually reinvent itself or the products or the services that they produce.
That's great. How would you describe, just by way of background, some of your roles and your responsibilities specifically at Georgia Pacific?
Yeah, so you mentioned in the intro being the Global IT Innovation technology innovation lead at Kimberly Clark. And in that role, I was doing a lot of emerging technology, rapid innovation, proofs of concepts, and figuring out how do you match an emerging technology with a business strategy and prove it out. And so there's a lot of rapid proofs of concept going on, and eventually commercializing many of those. But when I shifted over to Georgia Pacific, I joined a program that was a large SAP enterprise-wide implementation. So I went from rapid, short spurts to sort of this long, large integration and adoption of brand new business processes from end-to-end business, supply chain, manufacturing, marketing, e-commerce, and seeing this through a multi-year implementation effort. So my role in that program is driving business integration, the adoption, business readiness, user readiness, and a lot of that comes through business readiness activities, but also traditional training and communications.
Excellent. So we're in the midst of this COVID-19 crisis, and I'm wondering how has your innovation strategy changed at all as a result of it?
So overall, and this is what I would say about any strategy, and amidst what we're in right now, is we are in something that we're not quite certain what the long-term effects are, right? So we know things are changing and rapidly changing in the COVID-19 environment, and you need to be careful of how much that influences any strategy, any long-term strategy. What I will say is, from an innovation perspective, it really emphasizes the need to do co-innovation, partnering with people, keep that agility and speed. The other thing is, what's really come to light in COVID-19 is how are we executing our supply chain? And I think the focus of how companies are manufacturing and also executing their supply chain capabilities with their partners, their vendors, their suppliers, has really caused people to, and companies to, think about how do I innovate my supply chain? How do I optimize that better? What needs to change given the experiences that we're in right now?
So we got a question in advance from one of our members that I think is interesting, to kind of builds on that question that was just asked. And I'm wondering, so innovation during a major event typically requires building trust, both internally as well with your suppliers, your partners, and you need to get buy-in, right? So in order to pivot, you need to have that trust in order to have them come along with you. And the question specifically was, what strategies have you employed to kind of build that trust and confidence? And then when you have a crisis, when do you need to essentially just bulldoze right through and hope that they come along with you? So
my philosophy around building trust and in innovation applies today in COVID-19 and any other time, and that's really about empowering your team and the people that you work with to take risks, right? And understand that we don't have all the answers. We know that we're going to find opportunities and lessons learned. We're going to find success, but allowing and empowering that and rewarding or recognizing that when it happens is part of building that trust, right? Like, I got you. We're going to take some risks. We don't know what this means. We don't know what the future holds. I also think that you should always be asking the question around the problem that you're trying to solve. And this is classic innovation, right? Or anything. What problem are we really solving, and what's the value that we're hoping to achieve? So you empower your team, you empower them to make mistakes, try, adjust, and recognize that the results, no matter what they are, but I think it's also important that you're creating minimum viable products as well, so that as you're articulating what you think the result and the value of this innovation is going to be, you don't go and release your final product, right? We all know this. So I think part of building that trust is communicating that value, showing the results along the way as the team's executing and taking some of those risks.
That's a great observation. So as we think about, large manufacturing firms in particular, going forward, what are some of the ways in which technology might help to address some of the challenges that manufacturing firms face, whether you want to speak to this crisis in particular or just more globally?
So I'm going to go back to, I can speak it to from the crisis, since we're innovation in a crisis, right, is the resiliency series that we're in here. And go back to the supply chain, and you're seeing innovation happening in the supply chain, right? So companies like UPS are accelerating and implementing the use of drones and other emerging technologies to change the way they deliver products to the consumers. We've got things like social distancing, right? Where physically, drones may become mandatory in some cases where we physically can't always go where we need to go. So I think looking at how we optimize the supply chain, 3D printing is another example, where we traditionally may have always manufactured or purchased parts from other countries, and those are brought in. Are there new opportunities to leverage 3D printing to supply some of those key parts, and not just create them through 3D printing, but have the capability to shorten and decrease the supply chain, because it's cheaper and easier to do the 3D printing, more local and localize some of that effort versus have it, overseas or, in certain areas domestically. So I think this crisis has, although we've heard about shortages of certain products on shelves, and it's fundamentally going to change and impact how we execute our supply chain. And it goes for, all kinds of products, right? And I speak to a consumer products standpoint, but it's hitting all over in food and beverage industries as well.
That's very true, and I think that you kind of alluded to one question that I think is top of mind for everyone, myself included, which is really what's going on with all the toilet paper right now.
Yeah, what's so funny is I've spent over 20 years in consumer products and with two companies that make toilet paper, and so I think I didn't know when I finished college that my career might be centered around toilet paper, but here I am 20 years into it. So where is the toilet paper? Yes, there's an element of consumer hoarding and mass purchasing that's happened. But when you think about there's two different kinds of purchasing and buying of toilet paper. We've got our consumer at home, for Quilted Northern and Angel Soft, our Georgia Pacific brand. So these are purchased in stores and they have nice packaging and they fit in your at-home toilet paper rolls. So you've got this consumer at-home purchase behavior. And then traditionally we have our away from home, airports, restaurants, stadiums, all of these places. If you think about that, the purchasing of those products, the products are completely different. So consumers buy nice packaged smaller rolls. B2B and away from home, those rolls, if you haven't noticed, are quite a bit larger. The tissue is different. The raw materials that go into making that are different. So there are two different product lines. toilet paper is not a high profit margin product, right? So everything from the way it's produced to the way it's delivered is optimized for a relatively static demand. People aren't using more toilet paper, they're using it at home instead of at work, at airports, at all these other places. So, and we're seeing about a 40% increase in our consumer purchasing of toilet paper. You cannot shift a 40% production and supply chain just like that. You know, we have assets that produce these products that they're $1 million assets, and you can't switch over what they make and how they're made in a short term. So we'll eventually see a evening of this purchasing behavior. We may have to adjust since now we're seeing such a shift in consumer purchasing and demand versus the away from home. But again, this is where you have to sort of ride it out to see before you change how we're making our products and investing in a shift in consumer versus away from home. See, is this going to return back to a normal purchasing behavior? So that's where it is. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does. That explains it all. Thank you. That was definitely the most valuable conversation of all, like the 5 or 6 of these we've done to date. I mean, that was definitely the most compelling so far. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So shifting a little bit to some of the questions that we've gotten from some members. One of them was interesting, as it asked, specific to disaster recovery and business continuity plans. So we talked about the innovation strategy and whether the crisis had any impact there. What about with business continuity and disaster preparedness? Any changes there as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, or was it just, hey, this worked, we applied it, and it's business as usual?
Yeah, so from a business continuity standpoint, really haven't seen much change there. I will say there's a lot more pressure on IT, right? Because if you think about it, they're the one department that every single day within this away from home, work from home type of environment is being tested every day. But that's sort of typical. So from a business continuity perspective, though, that's a little bit different because you are changing how people are working. So it's interesting, yesterday I was actually in another event with some CIOs that we were talking about the business continuity. And especially in large companies, traditional companies, the question is, how do I know I'm as productive as I was, my team was, as my business was before when we were physically together? So I think there's more questions on the business continuity side and measuring, are we being as productive? Are we creating the results? How do I know that as a business leader being completely remote? How do I ensure and track that my team is being as productive and continuing business operations in this world versus the way we used to work? So that's more of the questions and responses that we've seen. One CIO did respond indicating, hey, I wish I had thought about that beforehand, because they're asking for metrics of in a technology sense of online, or and some of this is a little bit micromanagement, which I'm not a big fan of. It's like you kind of know if your team's performing or not. But I would say there's been more discussions in general about the continuing business operations remotely, and how do I know that and measure it before it's too late.
So you mentioned a little bit about so your personal preference is not to micromanage, and one of the questions we got was more about your personal leadership preference or style, and how do you motivate others as well as yourself in a time like this?
So I think it's part of it is building off of other people's strengths, and leveraging what they love to do. It's not micromanaging, right? I don't need to know. I know basically is my team performing or not. How I work with my team is no different, besides physically being there or not, in a remote environment or in person, right? So I think your style, your communication, you really have to up your game, following through and closing the loop on things, and that communication and that trust being remote is really important. When it comes to innovating in building trust in the environment that we're in right now, I would say that we're forced to, and no matter what we're talking about, whether it's product, service, just working together as a team. If you think about when you have all the resources you need available to you at any given time, you're not challenged to innovate and to think differently and work differently. And we've done all kinds of cool things with just something simple as Zoom, right? All these cool new features and backgrounds, some of which, like the Tiger King stuff, it's like, okay, but it's fun, right? So I think when you're working with your team, allowing creativity, being, thanks a lot, Skip. When having fun, allowing that communication, closing the loop, and showing genuine trust. And like I said, I go back to really empowering your team and leveraging their strengths, building upon what they love.
So I think that's a great observation, and I think it will really resonate with a lot of the folks we work with on a daily basis too. Kind of that empowerment, that servant leadership style. One other thing that came up in terms of the questions was digital transformation, and specifically cloud migration. So a lot of more sort of older, shall we say, or older guard companies have been around for a while with legacy systems. And I'm wondering, what is really in store for you all, either currently during the crisis or beyond, as it relates to cloud and digital transformation?
I can tell you from the program that I'm on, the Digital Core, our foundation is all on the cloud. I think that's, definitely, there's this years ago, it was, data centers on-premise and people owning and controlling all of that. And then there was this huge shift to 100% everything goes to the cloud. And then there's discussion about, is that really cost effective, and is that the right strategy? And I would say that there's probably the best thing is usually a hybrid. In some cases, you're in a cloud environment, and others you're not. We've experienced in a cloud environment, there's some things that are really great about it, and there's other things, you have to partner really well with your vendors on upgrades and when those happen. And you're kind of, unless it's private cloud, you're in some cases you don't have control necessarily like you used to before. But I would say definitely more cloud-based than on-premise.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes left, and so wanted to make sure that we had a chance to ask you a question that we're actually asking all of our guests, which is, in this virtual environment, what's the most embarrassing or awkward moment that you've had to date, either you personally, family, friends, extended network, et cetera?
So I don't have the traditional faux pas. I don't have dogs and cats, and my kids are a little bit older, so I don't have those moments. And I haven't, thank goodness, accidentally left my video or audio on. But I would say that I have sometimes, like, to be honest, I was just hoping through this 30 minutes, like, please Wi-Fi, please network, don't drop, don't go down. And but I've had a few situations where you lose connection, right? And if you're leading something, you know, it's kind of puts the meeting in a, okay, is she coming back? What happened? So I've had that happen a few times. Recently, I was driving and called into a meeting and kind of was going on about something, and the leader of the meeting said to me, "Hey, you can't see my screen, can you?" And I thought, uh-oh. I said, "No, actually I can't. I'm, you know, just an audio only." And she said, "Well, actually everything that you're saying is further down on our agenda, and we'll talk about it in like 5 minutes." So it was sort of like completely busted, right, that I was driving, audio only, not seeing the screen. But you know, I think I'm pretty lucky so far that I haven't had any major whoops moments in the virtual world.
That's great. So as we head into the home stretch and wrap up, I did just want to pause for a second. I did get a virtual background shared with me from Mark Bednarski, who's with iGraphics, one of our members. And so this is a shot of his garage, which I think shines some light on where all the toilet paper is right now. Oh. So it's no, I had to have some fun at Mark's expense. He was in the chat talking about where was all the toilet paper, and he's like, "No, it's not in my garage." Well, this proves it wrong.
I was really excited for a moment, Skip. I thought, he's going to put a Green Bay Packer background on. I can't wait.
That would have been great, a nice send-off. Wisconsin native. So we want to thank you, Renee, for taking some time out of your busy schedule to spend with us this morning. We really appreciate it. I know our members were really looking forward to this conversation, and we had a great turnout, so thanks again.
You're welcome. Like I said, thanks. It was fun to be here and chat with you and Kara and the team leading up to this.
Awesome. And big thank you, too, to Peggy Miller and Packstar again for underwriting this series. We really appreciate her ongoing support. So thank you all for spending some time with us this morning, and thank you to Renee for also taking time out of her busy schedule. Hope to see you all on Friday.
Thanks, all. Bye, Skip.
Bye. Thank you.